Tennessee's without Dylan Sampson, who was arguably their best player last year. Would you say he was Tennessee's best player last year?
Yes.
Okay. Then they'll be without Cooper Mays and Javontez Spraggins, who have moved on to the NFL. So my question is, who do the Vols miss most? Our poll question is up as well. If you want to take part, I'll update that here momentarily. Should the Vols make offensive coaching changes? So will Tennessee miss Dylan Sampson more, or the combination of Cooper Mays and Javontez Spraggins? What say you, Caleb Calhoun?
This is nothing on Cooper Mays and Javontez Spraggins because they were the best interior run blocking duo in the SEC for the past 3 years. But I'm not going the dually route where you'd rather have a special back than a special offensive line. I'm not going that route. But I am saying that it's harder to replace an extremely special back than it is two very good run blocking offensive linemen, I think. And I think Dylan Sampson had, and I say this as someone who was way out on him at the beginning of last year, I think he showed rare abilities that an average running back just can't replace. And we saw this during the season because Peyton Lewis, who I was high on, wasn't matching Dylan Sampson's production when he was in the game. Neither was Deshaun Bishop. And you saw that Dylan Sampson was in a class of his own with what he was able to do and how hard he ran. And because of that, I think they're going to have a harder time replacing Dylan Sampson than they will Cooper Mays and Javontez Spraggins.
Completely disagree. If they had Mays and Spraggins this year, I think Tennessee would have one of the better running games in the entire SEC because I think Peyton Lewis is going to be really good. I think he would have been really good last year. I think there's a tendency not to play guys early at Tennessee, which isn't real grand. Timothy, I saw your super chat. We'll get right to that. But listen, Dylan Sampson has an innate ability to find holes. He does. There's no question about it. He sets up his blocks as well as anybody I've seen since Travis Stevens. I think they're similar, but I think that Travis Stevens is kind of a poor man's Dylan Sampson. He's not quite as talented. He's really good, shifty, and all that, but they're somewhat similar type of running backs. Dylan Sampson was great at that, but did Dylan Sampson wear down defenses with power? Did he scare them with his speed? No. I think he was in every regard, including ball handling, which he had a couple of fumbles or 3, I believe, this season. I think he was a B player in everything. I don't think he was elite in any one thing. I think Peyton Lewis is going to be elite for a couple of different reasons. I think he's going to pound on defenses, wear them down, and then I think he's also going to have the ability to break the big one. So if they had Mays and Spraggins back, I think that Tennessee would have an incredible running game. They don't, but Peyton Lewis, I believe, will make Tennessee's running game significantly better. If Dylan Sampson, and Dylan Sampson and Peyton Lewis came in the same class and they were both seniors last year, I think Peyton Lewis would have been the leading rusher.
You know, I'm the one who thought Peyton Lewis was going to take Dylan Sampson's job. I can't go there now. I mean, Dylan Sampson just set the rushing record and the rushing touchdown record in the same season. And what struck me was his vision was so incredible. Peyton Lewis, I was a little disappointed in his vision. It wasn't Cam Seldon level vision, but there were still some issues.
You got to cut him a little bit of slack as a freshman. I mean,
but his elusiveness was also not where Sampson's is. And I mean, that's what really stood out. I mean, Dylan Sampson literally, he's what Alvin Kamara should have been when Kamara was playing at Tennessee. And I didn't buy into the whole Dylan Sampson, Alvin Kamara narrative. Fred White actually brought it up first. He nailed that. I mean, this was 2 years ago going into 2023. Fred White mentioned 2 name sets. Remember, Dave? It was James Pierce and Dylan Sampson. Boy, did he hit it out of the park with both.
Yep.
And yeah.
Who will Vols miss more? That's the poll question. Dylan Sampson, 62%. Javontez, 62%. Javontez Spraggins, Cooper Mays, 38%. I also think you're forgetting a little bit too much about the fact that Tennessee went to Florida with a much better team in 2023, and without Cooper Mays, looked like hot garbage. So I do think we need to, and I say that supporting your point, but let's not forget that we've seen real time Cooper Mays help lead the Vols to a big win over a good team. Whereas on the flip side, we've seen them struggle against an average team. And Caleb, that was not good. That look was not good. I believe with William Satterwhite, they'll have a better answer. I'm assuming with Umarov and some other guys that they have that they've got somebody ready for Javontez Spraggins. If they don't, then yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. But you do have to move on. You'd love to have Cooper for 20 years. But as good as he is, you do have to move on. I hear a lot of positive things about William Satterwhite. In fact, more than any other current offensive lineman that's out there as far as guys that could fill key roles. The other thing that we have to factor in, too, is this probably puts a little bit more on Nico Iamaleava. Cooper Mays is in charge of setting up the blocking schemes and doing that. And now I don't know that Satterwhite is going to be as good at that, but I think he's going to be a good player. Timothy had a super chat he wanted to throw out there. So let's go ahead and address that really quick. Is it true that Nico's dad told Heupel to quit doing 12 personnel to throw more? Is he dumb? You can throw out of any formation. I can tell you that Nico's family did not like the 12 personnel, did not think they were throwing the football enough. It wasn't just an NIL issue in the offseason. It was a little bit more than that, which that's a little bit scary to me, Caleb. You don't want parents that involved, especially when you had a running football team last year. I thought they could have done more with the receivers, but you had those guys that were continually banged up. And I think that Brew McCoy, the go-to guy, was kind of a shell of himself. Listen, if it's not for a hamstring to Dante Thornton, if it's not for the shoulder injury to Squirrel White, Brew McCoy banged up as well, they would have thrown the ball more. But that was a running football team last year, and for good reason.
Yeah, and I thought about that too. It's funny you say that because, like, if they did throw the ball more, you got two tackles playing on sprained ankles and receivers who can't get open. How many times do you think Nico would have been hit? He would have been wrecked last year. And but so Dave, I kind of vacillate. I go back and forth because I'm going to say that, and then tomorrow I'm going to say, well, but Nico's also the $2 million man, so he should be able to find a way to make guys get open and throw guys open and, be able to do something anyway. So where do you land on that? Do you land Nico is just limited because of the injury surrounding him, or it shouldn't matter? Nico should have been able to grab everybody by the throat and carry them because he's Nico and he got $2 million.
No, I think what you first said. I mean, the offensive tackle issue was a big deal, and I believe that ultimately undermined the beginning of his season, and he was never completely comfortable, even when they got better, until November-ish. So I think it was that. I think it was the offensive tackle issues and the injuries there, and that's why Nico was not the player that we expected. I think that's the primary reason. If I pick one reason, it's not Nico. It's not running 12 personnel. They did that because they had to. It's still the offensive tackle issue. We sound like a broken record, but we've been saying that for months.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The offensive tackles were an issue, which, by the way, Cooper, getting back to the Sampson running game point, Cooper Mays and Javontez Spraggins, them leaving or coming back doesn't fix that issue. It just adds and compounds more issues. So that may fuel your point of who will they miss more, but I just think that Sampson is so special of a running back that, put it this way, let's go back to the Derek Dooley argument that I know you made your head explode when he said you'd rather have a good back than a good offensive line, which was like insane that he said that. However, are there some backs that you would say are so special they kind of outweigh the value of a elite offensive line, or is that ever the case? Like, does LaDainian Tomlinson, like, would you take him no matter what offensive line you had?
The only guy that fits in that category, because I saw it with my own eyes, was Barry Sanders. He had a horrible offensive line throughout his career, but made things happen. It also made him dance around a little bit too often when he could have gotten a tough 2 or 3 yards. So as successful as he was, Caleb, I'm going to say no. I just don't. I don't think the best back in the world can make an offensive line go from bad to okay to even good.
Okay, that's a fair way to look at it. I probably lean on you. I would have said maybe Adrian Peterson during his time in Minnesota too. There were a few years where he had a really bad offensive line.
That's fair. And he's the type of guy that could flip it. But like, I'm an Emmitt Smith guy. I don't think that Emmitt Smith could run behind a bad offensive line and be a Hall of Famer. I think he would have been very good still. It would have been a back that maximizes runs, but not quite the same.